yourself during the Q&A portion of this talk. Now, a little bit about our speaker, Ethan. He's a third-year pre-med student at the University of Notre Dame in Indiana. He hails from San Mateo down the peninsula. During the summers, he has worked as a volunteer, care manager, and activities assistant at a senior living facility. He is studying to be a geriatrician and is the founder of Generations Connect, a nonprofit that connects older and younger adults through Zoom video call meetings. It's my big pleasure to introduce Ethan.
All right. Thank you so much, Susan, for the wonderful introduction. Can everyone hear me all right? Yeah. Okay, great. Well, thank you everybody so much again for coming and allowing me the opportunity to speak with you all. It is really with great pleasure that I'm able to join over Zoom from my college over in Indiana. Like Susan said, I'm a pre-med student at the University of Notre Dame. And recently, over the past summer, I started a nonprofit called Generations Connect, or otherwise known as Generations Unite. The goal of our organization is to kind of generate or create these intergenerational conversations. And so during this presentation, I'm going to kind of go into how I started the nonprofit, as well as why I think geriatrics is a very important and essential specialty that I think a lot of other pre-meds should be considering, as well as just the current need and the state of geriatrics in America. Anyways, so I guess a quick overview of kind of what I'll be going through during this presentation. I'm going to give you guys a little bit more of an introduction to myself so that we can get to know each other a little bit better. And then I'll be going into kind of why geriatrics is important to me. And then third, I'll be going into how my organization is creating these cross-generational conversations. Fourth, I'll be going into the importance of these conversations. And then lastly, I'll kind of be going over to how you guys can help, and if you guys are interested in our program, how to sign up. So first, a little bit more of an introduction. Like I said, I'm a student at Notre Dame studying biochemistry with a compassionate care and medicine minor. For those who don't know, compassionate care and medicine, it's a new minor actually at Notre Dame. What we study is essentially how compassion in the healthcare industry results in better outcomes, health outcomes, more efficiency, better effectiveness. So really using a compassion kind of approach to medicine is really important in terms of not only does it sound good, it just not only does it, it's nice to hear, but it also has actual data to support it as being an effective and efficient way of conducting yourself in the healthcare industry. So this minor is really important for pre-meds, really to help emphasize the importance of compassion in the healthcare industry. Other than that, I'm the youngest of 3 children. I have 2 older sisters named Stephanie and Samantha. My favorite place to travel is Maui, Hawaii. I go every other year. It is a wonderful experience. The warm air and the humidity, it's beautiful, great for my skin. Honestly, just a great place to go. My favorite book genre is actually mystery fictions. So Sherlock Holmes and Arthur Conan Doyle, as well as the various detectives by Agatha Christie. I just really enjoy mystery fiction novels. And some of my interests, I really enjoy cooking. I really enjoy baking and pastry. Health and fitness is really important to me. Like I said, geriatrics is very important. I'll be talking about that later. And I love to golf. And of course, Notre Dame football and theology is also a passion of mine. And if you guys have any questions about any of the things you guys are seeing, please feel free at the end to kind of ask me more about my minor or about my interests or anything like that. And I'd love to speak to you guys more about it. Okay, next. So yeah, I'd love to go into kind of why geriatrics is important to me and what I've found kind of in my studies. So geriatrics is the study of age-related diseases. Why it's really important right now is that there's actually a shortage of geriatricians in the United States. As you can see in this graph, in this diagram, the fastest growing population in America is actually older adults 65 years and older. So as you can see this is a graph by the US Census Bureau. They estimate that by the year 2030, 2040, we should see just a stark increase in the total percentage of our population being age 65 and older. And so that leads us kind of to our next graphic. This is published in the American Journal of Geriatric Society, the Journal of the American Geriatric Society. In the orange box to the left at the top, you can see that there is currently only one geriatrician per every 1,600 seniors. And as you can see on the right, they estimate that the current need for I guess the number of geriatricians needed to meet the U.S. demand is around 1,200 in the blue box, whereas the number of doctors who've actually begun training in the early 2010s was only about 75 doctors that year. So as you can see, 75 doctors starting geriatrics and 1,200 needed to keep up with demands. There's a stark shortage of geriatricians. Part of it is due to, as you can see in the green box, the fact that Medicare accounts for a lot of the geriatrician's income, leading to kind of lower, I guess, salaries than a lot of other specialties. But I think that a lot of doctors probably shouldn't be going into medicine if the only reason they want to is for money. Obviously there should be other motives. And that kind of brings me to why I want to be a geriatrician. You may be wondering, why would anybody want to, you make less money, everyone loves money. But to me, it's a lot deeper than that. And so I'd love to share a little bit more about that from me. So this is kind of my personal connection to older adults. So my family comes from China and Hong Kong. These are my grandparents over to the right during my high school graduation. And so in the Chinese culture, elders are very important. We're supposed to respect them. We're supposed to appreciate them. And for me personally, my grandparents, like I said, immigrated to America. And so they sacrificed a lot to give me the life I have today. They opened a restaurant in Chinatown in San Francisco. They worked 60 plus hours a week. Like most other older adults, they're just so selfless and so caring towards me and my sisters and my family. And so this kind of sacrifice that they did for me to give me the life I have today, I really want to give back, and I really appreciate what they've done. And like I said, giving back to the older generation is really important to me. It's really funny. I actually have just like a wonderful connection with them, but we don't actually speak the same language. They speak a little bit of English, but they mainly speak Cantonese. I speak obviously English, and I speak very little Cantonese. So it's really wonderful how I'm still able to kind of have this deep connection with them, even though we don't even speak the same language. And I think it just kind of goes to show that, maybe I have an old soul but I think I just have this innate ability to kind of form relationships with older adults. And this is something that I hope to carry on with me in my career as a geriatrician. Just a couple more details about myself, kind of my experiences that have led me also to wanting to follow geriatrics. So this summer, or last summer, I guess, and this summer, like Susan had said, I actually worked as a volunteer at a Sunrise Senior Living. So that's it's a big branch, I guess, but I worked at the local branch in San Mateo. And this summer, I worked actually as a care manager and an activities assistant. So I was actually getting paid, fortunately. But it was a wonderful experience. I was there actually at the beginning of coronavirus, so I was able to still work. But my experiences there really allowed me to, or really incited me to make my organization. But I'll touch more on that later. But what I learned actually most importantly from this experience is really just the connections I formed with my residents and with the people I was caring for. I wasn't necessarily doing the work that a geriatrician would be doing. I was doing more lower level kind of work that you would see at a senior home. However, kind of the relationships I formed with my residents was actually just the most transformative part of the experience. I was caring for these people basically 24/7 during my shifts, and really spending all of my free time, all of my time just socializing with them and kind of hanging out with my residents. Because honestly, they didn't have many other, especially during lockdown, they didn't have many other people to talk to. And so me, being energetic and really enthusiastic, it was just a great experience to go and form those connections with them. And some of the other things I'm involved with is I'm also the treasurer of a club called Aging with Grace over at Notre Dame. What we do is during the school year, or pre-COVID, we actually would go to senior homes in the area and give presentations about various topics such as stress or sleep, or maybe how the brain works, as a way just to inform older adults kind of the process of aging and anything they might want to know. and that's a really good experience. And then lastly, I actually am a part of a biochemistry lab at the University of Notre Dame. We're actually studying currently or I guess the reasoning behind why ovarian cancer is so prevalent in older women, and how aging actually increases your likelihood of getting ovarian cancer, and kind of the biochemical, I guess, processes behind that that statement. And yeah, like I said, if you guys are interested in learning more about the research of why ovarian cancer is so prevalent, I would love to talk to you more about that as well in the Q&A after. And then lastly, down at the bottom, you can see a logo. That's actually the logo for my nonprofit, which I'm going to be speaking about next, that I started this summer. So I started this nonprofit at the beginning of summer, sort of when coronavirus was kind of hitting the nation. COVID had kind of arrived to California, and I was already kind of working in the Sunrise Senior Living Center. So I had, firsthand experience of how kind of impactful the disease was, or the virus was, towards older adults. Obviously, a lot of older adults have pre-existing health conditions, so social isolation was really important for them to stay healthy, which is a good and a bad thing, obviously. And so really, when I was at the senior center, I got a really great opportunity to, like I said, socialize with my residents. And they did love talking to me, and a lot of the other young adult volunteers and workers. Something about, me being lively and enthusiastic, having a bright future and such. A lot of the older adults really loved, talking to me and telling me their stories, and I was eager to hear them. And so I kind of took that experience, and I saw how much my residents love talking to young adults. And so I created this nonprofit with the goal primarily of connecting older and younger adults through video and FaceTime calls, or video phone calls, FaceTime calls. So it's called Generations Unite, or Generations Connect, either or. And what we do is, the first step is we pair older adults with young adults based on similar backgrounds and interests. So we try to pair up maybe a former nurse with a nursing student, or maybe a former teacher with someone with a student who maybe is looking about being a professor or a teacher. And we allow them to do FaceTime calls, like I said, while facilitating the sharing of stories and experiences and wisdoms, with the hope that, we can learn something from each other. And then thirdly, we're really trying to promote virtual socialization during this pandemic, allow older adults an outlet to socialize, as well as young adults an outlet to form new connections. And then lastly, and more importantly, I'm really trying to generate a greater appreciation for older adults in the youth. I think this is really important, as seen by kind of the low geriatrics numbers. I think there is a disconnect between our generations, and our organization is really striving to create, kind of bridging the gap between our two generations, the older and younger adults. And so our current focus, actually, as we kind of went more, as our nonprofit developed more, we realized that the most important part of our organization was the conversations. Before, it was focused on maybe, giving socialization and such to older adults, but now it's become kind of evolved into an organization that's more in tune with the importance of these conversations, in terms of helping both sides of the parties, so both younger and older adults. So for us, we're really, like I said, we're really in tune with bridging the gap between our generations, and allowing older adults the opportunity to help guide the younger generation. You guys have lived through it. You guys have set up the world we live in today. And so a lot of young adults really want to know about the experiences you guys have had, and the stories you guys have to tell. And like I said, for you guys as well, I would hope that, you guys can learn, or older adults can learn from the young adults' perspective, and vice versa, and kind of as a way to unify our community. And so actually, I think this is a good time, if we're all right on time. Sorry. This is actually a great time for me to kind of open up the floor to you guys. I would love to give a little bit of the explanation about kind of what young adults want to hear from older adults. Young adults like me, we know we're going to have to go through struggles in life. We know we're going to have to go through failures, through deaths in the family. We may have career choices that are our career decisions that we have to make. Most notably, kind of people my age, high school and college students. What's important for us is a lot of us don't know necessarily what we're going to do with our life. We don't know what passion we have, what, interests, what career choice we want to make. And so actually now would be a great time for me to kind of open the floor, like I said, and allow any of you guys to kind of tell.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Mm-hmm.
Great. Okay, so Ethan, I'm sorry, what was your question?
Yeah. So any sort of advice that you guys would have for a younger adult? Like I said, some of the more popular questions are, what do we do if we don't know what we want to do with our career? If we don't know what our passion is yet? That's a very common question that a lot of people have. I guess how you guys dealt with any sort of failures or struggles, major failures in your life, how to come back from those.
Mm. This is more a question for you.
Sure.
Are there
Yeah.
certain medical schools that are better with geriatrics? Where would you hope to go geographically after this, and where would you be applying?
Yeah, there are some really good geriatrics programs across the United States. Most notably, there's one in New York at Mount Sinai. There's one in LA over in UCLA. Harvard and Stanford are obviously good for everything, but they're notably very good for geriatrics as well. To be honest, I would rather be on the West Coast. Since I've experienced kind of the Midwest already, I realized that I kind of want to go back to California. I've been there, done that kind of mentality. So yeah, I would really love to go to LA or anywhere in California, really.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, Wendy.
Yeah, I have a piece
Sure,
of
Wendy.
advice that came to
Sure.
mind when you asked the question for young people.
Yeah.
I would say be aware of who you meet, who you have a lot of admiration for, that you like the way they are living their life, and find out what they're interested in and what they do, both professionally, but also the other ways, spiritually, educationally. Ask if you can tag along to some of their activities. I do have a granddaughter who in her teens was very eager to come to Berkeley and go to some of my activities. And I said, well, they're mostly old people. She says, well, I really like being around old people. So that would be my advice, to put yourself in the presence of people who you have admiration for, the way they're living their lives.
Definitely. I think that's a really good piece of advice. For me, I think I've, there's people in my life that I've kind of, like you said, tagged along with, my sister most notably. And she's been a huge part in kind of shaping kind of where she's older, right? So I've kind of seen what she's done and made adjustments for me personally, or followed her footsteps. But yeah, I think that's a great piece of advice. Thank you, Wendy.
Ethan, I have a question. What are some of the fears or challenges that people your age have about the next few years, whether it's their education or living in the world, or what are some of the things that you feel like are topics that you guys discuss that you worry about?
Yeah, that's a great question. The one that I can think of off the top of my head is, a lot of people are scared of living alone. We're scared of going into the working world once we're done with college. We have such a regimented life for, like 22 years essentially, right? High school is very schedule based, college is you live on campus. So when you're in the working world, you're by yourself, you're living on your own in maybe a foreign city, depending on where your job takes you. A lot of people at my school, especially, they're very driven, right? So they're not necessarily going to, they're going to take jobs wherever they can get them, right? So they might end up in New York, and meanwhile they grew up in a rural town in Iowa or Ohio, and so kind of that experience is actually very much a fear a lot of my cohorts.
That's interesting.
So how do you survive that transition of having such a scheduled life where you know exactly what's going to happen, to you're on your own and you have so many big decisions to make about taking care of yourself, and job is probably the easiest one because people will kind of help you, but then everything else you're kind of on your own. Yeah, boy, it's been a
Yeah.
long time for all of us, huh? Thinking back on it.
Yes.
Yeah, I think also the
Yeah.
one way of looking at it, part of that is, this may sound like a cliche, almost an attitude though. It's like,
Mhm.
oh, this is an opportunity. This could be exciting. It's scary,
Mhm.
yeah, but you have the freedom. You don't have to stay where you are. And my husband was given advice when he was going, in his case, he was going to seminary, but that part doesn't make a difference, I think. He was from Arizona, and his mentors said, you go a long way from home
Mhm.
and have a new experience. You can always come back. You know, if you're from Arizona, you can always come back to Arizona. But to find places where you'll have new experiences, meet people in different cultural contexts and so on. And he ended up going to Boston from Arizona,
Mhm.
and learned to love Boston, by the way. But I had never thought of that when I was in college, the idea of, you know, going far away being, never occurred to me. And once I heard that from my husband, I thought, wow, that's powerful.
Definitely.
Um,
Yeah, definitely.
Judy, I think you had your hand raised, and then Leslie.
Yeah, and as a person who never went far away from home, I don't have that experience. But I had two thoughts about how to deal with going into unknown future and figuring things out. And they come from originally there was a book written many years ago called Wishcraft, and my friends and I started using the book, and we ended up, there was a whole big group, and it ended up there were 3 of us, and we've been meeting together for 20 something years,
Oh,
Wow.
every 2 or 3 weeks. And now I'm retired, and they're getting closer to retirement. But in the beginning, it was talking about our work lives and what was hard, and just giving each other support and occasionally advice, which we were free to not pay attention to if we didn't want to.
Sure.
But 2 of the things I remember from when we first were using this book that we had read was when you're thinking about doing something new and you're not sure if it's what you want, just imagine for a day that's what I'm doing, and just think about what it feels like for a day, as if I am there.
Mhm.
And the other was when you're trying to get something that's hard or working towards something that feels insurmountable, what's the single smallest step I can take?
Mhm.
And then do that.
Wow.
Sure, taking baby steps. That's great.
baby step.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Leslie, you had something to say. You have to unmute yourself.
You're muted.
Unmute yourself. There you go.
Sorry. Actually, I was just, being comfortable with my hand, but I'm happy to talk always. I'm a teacher.
Oh,
So we,
Perfect.
I went into teaching at age 38. Actually, I was a little older than that. I'm 81 now. And I just retired this year. I liked it so much. And I often recommend to my students that they consider teaching because you get to share what's most important to you. How often do people get to do that?
Yeah.
And you do it on a daily basis, the thing you love. And the subject I taught, anthropology, at an introductory level at community college in Oakland, had students who, our student body was really poor. And so many of them couldn't afford to go into anthropology itself. It's not, you make a decent enough living, but they needed to support elders and young other family members. And often you can't do that on an anthropologist's salary. But it did enrich their lives. And I urge them when they're in college to take what most intrigues them. And fortunately, anthropology at the introductory level covers human nature, that would be human biology, human culture, would be cultures of the world. So there's something in it for everybody that's going to, correspond to their interests. And so I recommend that they always take a course that is just really for their enjoyment. And they often end up going into those fields. So many of my students have gone into medicine, actually. For those of you who have been in medicine, as one of my former students is a nurse practitioner now, and she's teaching at the community college I just left. And she's been teaching there for several years because she has a degree in anthropology from Stanford. And so she's considering medicine too in a more serious way. So I think, sharing what is most interesting to you with younger people is often helpful to them.
Definitely. Yeah, that's a really great piece of advice. Thank you, Leslie. I appreciate it.
Becky, you have something to say?
Hi. I was going to say there's a book that I refer to my students, and I found it very helpful. It's called The Four Agreements. It's by a man named Ruiz, and I believe his ancestors were Mayans. And he talks about always speak with integrity, etc. But one of them I love is he talks about don't take everything personally. That often when we're criticized, yes, we can listen to it, but it's also the other person's perspective, and not to necessarily let it define you. So I've given some of my students who are administrators the summary of it, and I'd go back to their offices and they'd have the four agreements pinned up on their bulletin board. So you might want to check it out and see if it speaks to you.
Yeah.
I definitely have to check that out. Thank you, Becky.
You're welcome.
Judith.
Hi, I'm sorry I'm late. And then going to talk. But anyway, I think I told my support group recently, I will be in school forever. Mostly I will be in school forever because I depend upon the printing facilities of a particular community college, Berkeley City College, which is wonderful. And it's an ongoing artist community for many years. But there are many benefits from being in community colleges. So I always take what they call a full-time load. And so this semester, actually, I just got off the phone on Tuesday with two very interesting intergenerational conversations. And one thing that I noticed is when I'm 76. I look younger, certainly, but not all that younger, yeah? So, so when we sort of, and I'm in a multimedia field, and this particular class is with game animators. And all those people. And so I just confront it directly. I just say, I am so very old, but so very cool. And that takes away the fact that they will ever bring up the subject of age. And I noticed after I did that on the first conversation, that when we had all this discussion, we were doing, I'm in this design rapid prototyping class and blah, blah, blah. And we all work together on Zoom whiteboards. And when things came up with all these games and sayings and things, having said that I am very old and kind of open in a certain code way, they were translating. I'd say, what does that say? And then it would be translated. And then when somebody said, I am deeply in love with Alex Hirsch, and I didn't even know who that was. Of course, he was this god of animated, kind of cult animated things. And they just translate for me. And also I found out that when I risk, like in my art class last night, when I risk, there's a new thing called, or 2 nights ago, a human eye project where this woman took photos of people of every color and then took 6 points in their nose and made a background of that Pantone color. so that these huge murals have been going around the country. But the thing is, she never did beyond a certain level of black, where people have blue undertones. She wanted a red project. And so being my age, I just said, being my age, I will just say it. Feel free to disagree. I just put it out there. I said, I think this is racist. And it engendered a multi-generational, multi-ethnic talk for 1 hour and a quarter on that. And I'm deeply grateful to go to school.
That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing your experiences, Judith.
Mary, yeah.
Yep.
Hi. Thank you, Ethan, for all the information.
Yeah.
I have 2 points. One point is I'm noticing there's only one man present. And I'm wondering how to approach my...
Two. There's Rain.
I'm so sorry. I'm only seeing one.
My wife's image was out earlier.
My apologies. I'm so sorry. I'm wondering how, when you are looking at geriatric medicine, my husband is a lot older than me. And what I noticed, especially my son is 46. He has young children, but he's very open. He's a communicator, and he has friends from high school and college, and they may not get together a lot, but they communicate. Unlike, I think, older men of the early baby boomers, or you would say the World War II generation. And I saw my husband is 87, and how, because men aren't communicating about health issues, we know that women communicate about health issues. We're kind of trained for that biologically, because many of us bear children. But how you are approaching that, I think it's a real issue for men to really learn how to stay healthy, how to really be assertive in communicating with your healthcare providers. I mean, I had to learn, and I'm an assertive person. I had a procedure done, and it went wrong, and the physician who did it was blaming me. And when he kept on telling me about all the books he had written, and he was the expert. I'm like, hello, you weren't the expert here. But but I was going to do it, and I think a lot of especially men just don't do that. My other point of advice for you is, I'm a liberal arts major. I have a master's degree in Shakespearean literature, but yet I think you need to look at skills. I have worked in politics as a campaign manager. I've worked in corporations. I've worked in teaching. I've worked in nonprofits. But when I look at it, I use those core skills. And skills are transferable. And the other thing is, when you start out, if it's difficult and challenging, don't give up on yourself. Don't put yourself down. Thank you.
I really appreciate that input. Yeah, I definitely do agree that's the soft skills that are kind of really, that we preach at school, are really important, and really, yeah, like you said, transferable through across all sorts of professions. On the second, I guess the first topic that you're talking about, I guess older men, perhaps in the healthcare industry, we actually did kind of touch, not really on this specific topic, but kind of just the idea of why compassion, like I said, compassion in healthcare is important. It is ultimately to form these relationships with your patients so that they do want to tell you these things. If you really take the time to form relationships with your patients, we see statistically, your patients are more likely to admit things to you. They're more likely to follow your suggestions. They're more likely to tell you when things are wrong. If you are just this hardo, cold kind of doctor who's just really smart, like you said, and has a bunch of books published, but doesn't really take the time to kind of make those connections and, be vulnerable and show a soft side essentially to your patients, then you're not going to get kind of that response. And so that's really something we're pushing in our course, really trying to form those relationships, because ultimately it does lead to more effective and more efficient healthcare. And so, contrary to, I guess, like what other people would otherwise think. I think, you would, Ida?
Oh, okay. I just wanted to comment too, that cultural, as you've probably even noticed in your own family, there are cultural aspects to getting older. And my husband is 8 years older than I am, and he has a very hard time accepting the fact that there are a lot of things that are difficult for him to do. And he used to do them okay. And I have to tell him, just be patient. It's okay if you want to sit down, and take a rest and so on. But it's very hard. And having to do video chats with your doctor does not help, because it's too impersonal. Even though, for example, we've been to the same doctor for nearly 40 years, and it would not work for my husband to do a video chat. That's for sure. He needs to see the doctor because they're friends. 40 years, And I think that's an important aspect of getting older, that we have to take into account that we're not all the same, and we don't all come from the same areas. And so how we age is dependent on what our background was and where we're from. So it's been hard. He's had a hard time being old, but that's okay. We're working on it.
Yeah, that's definitely a very important perspective to consider.
Yeah,
definitely.
I'd like to build on that a little bit. Edith, thank you. I'm an anthropologist, and one of my professors had a joint appointment at the University of Utah Medical School. And his remit was to bring the learnings of anthropology, the cultural dynamics that would impinge on medical care, and the resistance that he ran into. Even though he was hired to do that, he said, they talked about it, but for them it seemed, that's so soft, that's so not rigorous science, and so forth. And he talked about that being a very significant barrier to actually doing what they had asked him to do. And so that, and picking up what Edith said, culturally speaking, one approach is aging in unique ways, as you mentioned about your parents too, or your grandparents. So I'm wondering, as you are doing your work in terms of compassionate conversations and compassionate care, that flows into, if you will, soft science. It's and I'm wondering what kind of reception you're getting when you deal with perhaps your medical professors or professors who are trained in that regard, what you find is effective in having them listen to this, because apparently there's quite a challenge.
Yeah, so I know we're running out of time, but I'll touch on this really briefly. But we definitely are seeing this as kind of a new wave, I guess you would say. So obviously a lot of people are, resistant to change often, but this is kind of, like I said, there's a lot of new professors and a lot of really, what's the word, I guess, intelligent people in the community, well respected, people who are picking up kind of the empirical data that supports compassion. And I think that's, I mean, we're all scientists, right? So really the way to get to them is using data. We're using science. And we actually, like I said, we are able to actually prove that compassion does make a significant difference. I have some statistics. If you guys want, I could go through them during the Q&A. But yeah, so I think as kind of we're progressing, I think people are opening up to it more. Obviously, you're going to have, I guess, you're going to have people who aren't maybe as receptive. But I think in general, my professor seems like he's having a good, he's actually the one who wrote a major book about it. And so that's why he's teaching the class. He says that he's getting a lot of professors or a lot of medical people who are, emailing him about the book, about, saying, thank you. Like, this is a very, very good piece of work and well researched and well presented. And so, yeah, I'm thinking that hopefully in the next maybe 10, 20 years, I'm thinking that compassion will become, an even greater aspect of healthcare than it is now. But thank you for that question.
Oh, Judy.
Just a quick question. What is the book that your professor wrote?
Yes, it is called How Doctors Care. It's by, and I can provide a kind of a more description if you guys are interested, to Susan, and she can send it out to you guys. But it's called How Doctors Care by Dr. Dominic Vachon. And so, yeah, and there's also, so in addition to that one, there's also another book that you guys might want to check out called Compassionomics. So that's, I guess, a mashup of compassion and economics. And so it's really looking at, from an economics perspective, how compassion is actually saving money in the medical industry, right? From, more preventative measures and, less, yeah. So I guess putting less strain on the medical industry. So yeah, those two books, How Doctors Care by Dominic Vachon and Compassionomics by, don't exactly know the author, but yes, Compassionomics.
So I have a question.
Susan.
I read in an article in a magazine that it takes longer to train as a geriatrician. Is that true? More years?
Yeah.
Like what are you getting that a general practitioner is not? And then the second part of that question is, what are some of the focuses of what are some of the things that you're looking at? Because you talked about like how the body ages and some of the things that can happen as the body ages. So what are some things that you would typically see in that field when you're practicing?
Yeah. So, I mean, geriatrics, part of the reason why it's so difficult is because you're essentially a family doctor, right? So you need to be very broad in terms of your training, know basically every system, everything. But then with your geriatrics, you need to know very specifics about, the most popular diseases, Alzheimer's, dementia, and as well as other, trends in aging that you might see. As obviously as people age, the problems, various medical problems become more prevalent, right? So as when I go to my family doctor, or I guess versus what my parents go to, there's a very difference in the time of how long it takes to for our appointments, because there's various things they need to check on. But like I said, for geriatrics, to be a board certified geriatrics, I do believe it's more training than your average doctor, and you don't exactly see necessarily that kind of. Usually more training would result in higher pay, but that's not necessarily the case for geriatricians.
In higher debt, probably.
Exactly, in higher debt, yes. So because you do need to go, like I said, you need to study the brain for Alzheimer's and dementia. You need to study, various systems for cancer, oncology, and other really, prevalent age-related diseases. And so I think this additional training is really what causes geriatricians to require more time in medical school, as well as have more debt, you could say, from the more training, and not as necessarily the same monetary compensation, I guess you would say.
Do you know how many geriatricians are in California?
I don't exactly know. I could look into that, obviously, but there is at least I know in the Bay Area, there's a very famous geriatrician, or at least someone I know personally. Her name is Dr. Elizabeth Landsverk. She is, I guess, like one of the, she graduated from Mount Sinai, and she's kind of she does broad, I guess, like she I guess has a program where she kind of just does like basically as many patients as she can, right? So she focuses entirely on geriatrics. And so she would probably know more about how many geriatricians are in the Bay Area. And that's definitely something I can look into. But I don't exactly know on the top of my head.
Mm-hmm.
All right. I know the book by Gowande, I mean, he just talks about the lack of number, I mean, the low numbers of, and you mentioned that earlier on, this, the, less and less people going into geriatrics, perhaps for monetary reasons, I don't know, but.
Exactly.
There's also a very good book written by a geriatrician. I think that she's in Stanford, and a lot of good information for us, but she did a lot of house calls because a lot of people as they age don't have the physical or resources to be able to transport themselves to hospitals. And she talked about hospitals being unfriendly towards people as they age, because
Definitely.
you go in this building over here, then you have to go through these steps or elevators or that and so on. I wrote to her when I moved to Mill Valley to ask if she knew a geriatrician to recommend here. She said she's not aware of any. Well, but she would let me know if she came across some. But I do know that from where I live, a lot of people recommended somebody who's not a geriatrician per se, but obviously he's worked with a lot of older people, and that was helpful.
Sure. Definitely.
I have a comment.
Sure.
So I belong to Kaiser, and a few years ago, they started a program called Family Care. And so what they're trying to do is get doctors to basically take care of the whole family, from the babies to the great-grandparents. So they get to see the whole family. And I guess this must inform them about how best to reach the older generation or all the generations.
Sure.
I've stayed with my own doctor, so I haven't joined this. But what do you think about that approach?
Yeah, I think that's definitely a very, in terms of like I was saying about kind of forming those relationships, that's definitely a good way to get kind of your I guess your patient as an older adult to be receptive to what you're saying, and making sure that they do tell you as a physician everything that's going wrong or right with their life, medically speaking. So I definitely think that is a good approach to that. Geriatrics, I think there are a lot of people of various, I guess, specialization, right? So someone who's covering, I guess, all ages maybe wouldn't be as, or would have to go through a lot more training to kind of get all the training they need to, cover all those ranges, right? Because there's obviously, as people are young, it's very different than when you're older. But if someone can have the proper training, I think that's a really great solution. They would just have to put in, right, obviously the work to get the training and be willing to do that.
Katie and Rain, I think.
If I could just follow up a tiny piece on that, and just a couple of years ago, I got to go to West Virginia to the Gesundheit Institute, and Dr. Patch Adams, who was very much, he's even funnier than the Robin Williams portrayal, but very much coming from a holistic perspective of doctors is integrated and highly available and part of the larger community. So it's not a rare special opportunity, but health integrated. We can certainly look at European countries and even in the developing world, many examples of community health with people on each block responsible for the health of their community, and things are much more nipped in the bud. And collectively, people are responsible, and families are watching out for each other, and not like, I just was recently back supporting my family. My mother was passing near Boston of lung cancer, and she got into hospice, but like many, it was later because of pushing to try to hold out and just navigating the whole process. And it's like, there got to be some better approaches.
Definitely. Thank you for sharing that.
Katie, you're muted. Oh,
I just ran across an article in the latest AARP magazine. I don't necessarily recommend the magazine, but it had a good article about a man who lives in Baton Rouge, and he treats 1,200 patients, and it's what he says about the looming crisis for older Americans. It just is a very interesting article, and I would recommend you.
Yeah, I as part of the kind of the preparation for this presentation, I actually did read that exact article about the geriatrician in Baton Rouge. That's actually how I got kind of led to the infographic I showed about the shortage of geriatricians. But yeah, that's definitely a really great one to check out. I actually can send a link, I believe, of it in the chat for those who are interested in reading as well.
That would be great.
yeah. And I think one thing has been my experience. I have a doctor who is not a geriatrician, but she's an internist who has a specialty in internal medicine. And I have experienced, and maybe it's just she, I don't know, but that she really has a depth of information and understanding about older people, or about, I mean, it's not like general medicine. It's general medicine on steroids, in a sense. And so I was thinking, in the lack of numbers of geriatricians, just occurred to me, I'm wondering if finding experienced internists, pronounce it, would be an alternative that might be helpful. So I don't know if anybody has any suggestions along that line, but I've been very impressed with my doctor.
Can you give us her name?
Oh yeah, she's retiring in December. I told her she had no right to do that. Michio Kawachi, she is amazing.
I've heard of her.
Oh, she's amazing. She close to walks on water, but she'll take an hour with you. I mean, she'll take the hour, and she does that with other people. So you learn to wait.
I recently got a new primary care person, and I looked at her credentials. It was at Kaiser, and it said her specialties were adolescents and geriatrics. And I wasn't so impressed, before seeing her. So I asked her directly, as I do, why? And she said, why are you doing this? Why are you splitting this? And she said, well, we're trying to combine those two in specialties in internists at Kaiser, because those are the two very most changing period, physically and mental and emotionally changing periods of life. And so we're trying to kind of make that a little bit more holistic in terms of sort of combining the knowledge about emotional ramifications as well. So actually that made a little sense to me. And I have found that she's been sending me letters about, well, research indicates that you as a person, 76, over 75, should be doing this and this and this, make an appointment with me. And so she's up on that. So I was surprised.
Yeah,
That's pretty cool.
Interesting.
That's wonderful. Yeah. So I think if that's, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay, I was going to say, in the time that we have left, I think it might be good if you talked a little bit about if people are interested in learning more about your project,
yeah,
and how to participate.
Sure, that would be wonderful. Let me share my screen again one more time, and I'll just kind of go over. Yeah, if you guys really enjoyed kind of the sharing experience that we just had, kind of sharing, what your knowledge about or your advice, any sort of experiences, then it'd be great if you guys could sign up for our program. So what you can do to help, right? So we have a lot of really eager young adults who want to hear from you guys, who want to hear from older adults. Like I said, there's a lot of young adults who are going through like they have fears, are they going through struggles, and they would love to hear from an experienced someone who's essentially built the world we live in. So how to sign up. So if you're interested, we operate entirely through online, or we actually operate over the phone as well. So you can go to our website, and I'll put it in the chat as well as in something that Susan will send out. But it's www.generationsunite.org. There's a get started page, as well as an older adult participant application that just overviews your interests, your hobbies, and your contact information. That way we can pair you up with a young adult who has similar, like I said, interests. Once you fill out that application, you'll get a confirmation email saying that you've got approved, and it will include the name, phone number, and email of your assigned adult volunteer or young adult volunteer. And then you'll go ahead and schedule, manage, and cancel phone, FaceTime, or Zoom appointments through our website. And I'll go ahead and show that in a moment. So once you do fill out the application, you'll have an opportunity to, give me one quick second. So here's our website. You can go ahead and click join us. That's the best way to get started. It has instructions on how to sign up as well. But the first step is, like I said, to fill out a digital application, as well as register for an account at the top right. And once you register for an account, you can go ahead and, like I said, you'll receive an email detailing who your volunteer that you've been assigned to is. And once you do that, you can go ahead and use our website to schedule appointments. So if you click the Book Now page, for example, here are details about how to do it. But the services we offer are a Zoom video call, phone call, or FaceTime call. So for instance, say you're interested in doing a phone call, you can go ahead and press Book Now. But the most complicated one is Zoom, so we'll go ahead and kind of go over that. So say, for instance, you want to book a Zoom appointment with your assigned young adult to have those conversations. You can go ahead and click the top right over here and select which volunteer you've been assigned to. So for instance, if you've been assigned to me, Ethan Lowe, you go ahead and select that name. And that way you can actually see my availability on every day of the week and for the future. So this way, to book an appointment, it's as easy as selecting a time that you're free, that is available, and hitting next, and typing in your name, your email, and your phone number. Once you type that information, you'll simply get give me 1 second again. You'll simply get an email confirmation that looks kind of like this. Thank you for booking a call. Your call with your young adult has been set up. Here are the details. Here's the time. And at the bottom, you can see here's the Zoom link meeting, the Zoom meeting link. So you go ahead and just click that button when the time comes. So this way, you have an easy way to schedule and manage your appointments with your young adult, kind of as just an ease of scheduling. But obviously, if you want, you and your young adult can just schedule appointments via phone or texting or just, I guess, doing it, over whatever media you guys recommend or you guys prefer. But we just set up this website just as an easy way to schedule in case you guys are interested in doing it that way.
So it's not mandatory that we go through you.
Not mandatory that we go through me or go through us. We kind of just set up this system primarily for people who, maybe want to stay organized, or, they just want to use this service. And here's an example of once you get approved, this is what the email will look like. So it's going to say, so I use Susan's name in this instance. So it's going to say, hello, Susan, or the name of the older adult. Welcome to the family. And in the middle, you should see your assignment. So I paired up Susan with me. So Susan, you've been paired with Ethan Lowe. Here's his email, here's his phone number, and then instructions on how to book an appointment if you choose to do that. Either that, or you can simply shoot them an email, shoot them a text, or maybe a phone call at any time and just, ask them what time they're free. So it's really up to you guys. Mm-hmm. And then one last thing I just wanted to show you guys as well. Let's see. Another part about our website is that if you do it through our website, you can actually manage your bookings on our website. So you can go ahead and reschedule and cancel your appointment whenever you want. So that way it makes it easy on you. If you don't have time to send them an email or send them a phone call canceling the appointment, do it through the website. It'll automatically send an email to both parties saying that it's been canceled or it's been rescheduled. That way it's really easy on you guys. And so I think that is all for how to sign up.
I have a question.
If you guys have, yeah, sure.
Question. Do you manage, I mean, so do you have people, I mean, how do you match people up with each other? And then also, do you check in with people to see how it's going? Is there any sort of follow up to make sure everybody's
Exactly.
happy with the situation?
Yeah. So we actually are coming out with a survey soon, but at the moment, the volunteer actually, or sorry, not the volunteer, the younger adult is actually going to be filling out a log, just so that if they need hours, if they're, a lot of the younger adults, they need volunteer hours or whatever. So our program, we offer volunteer hours to them. Just so that we can, for their school or whatever program they're a part of. And so they'll actually fill out a log and send it to us. And that way we can kind of keep track. They'll tell us how the conversation went. What did you guys talk about? And that way we can kind of check in. Of course, during the kind of the early parts of the conversations or of the talks, we'll be checking in, calling both parties. Either me or someone on our team will give you guys a call just to see how it's going. And then, of course, on our website is contact information in case you guys have any questions for me as well. If you guys need anything from me, or maybe you guys maybe don't necessarily mesh well with your young adult, then we can go ahead and switch you up. So on the bottom, you can see our phone number and our email. And like Susan asked, how do we, I guess, like you said, match up? So we really try to match up people, like I said, based off similarities. So for instance, we love to do cultural similarities. So recently we matched up people of similar religions. So I had a young adult who was Hindu or Hindi, and then who spoke Hindi and who was Hindu. And I had an older adult who was the same. And so I matched them up. People who speak same languages, Spanish, Chinese, we'll match them up as well. People, like I said, who are a former nurse or maybe a former person in the pharmaceutical industry or the medical industry, we'll match them up with a pre-med student or someone who's interested in going into the healthcare industry. Like I said, someone who's interested in being a professor, we'll match them up with someone who is a former teacher, kind of so they have those talking points and those things to relate on.
I think, Wendy, you had a question that you put in the chat. I know you're eating something right now.
Let's see. Sorry, give me 1 second. Okay, perfect. Yes. Okay, so Wendy asked, she has 8 grandchildren. Could I get your support for this kind of communication with them? Yes. If they do want to, I guess, are you saying they want to sign up as a volunteer, Wendy? Or as a young adult, I guess?
I was thinking about support if I want to have that kind of communication and your support for it with any of my grandchildren.
Oh, I see. So you want, I mean, if you wanted to use our booking services or our website or anything, we could definitely help facilitate conversations with, like you said, with your grandchildren, with anybody. They would just go ahead. I mean, I guess, they would go ahead and fill out an application just so we can get them in their system. That way we can, pair them up with you, I guess, like you said. And they can go ahead and you can go ahead and book an appointment with them, and they'll get emails and they'll get notifications when the appointment's coming up. So that way, it's a reminder system for them. I mean, we'd be happy to support that.
Do you provide feedback after this? I mean, after calls or a relationship starts?
Yes, to both the older adult and the young adult.
Mm-hmm. Or either or.
Either or. So I guess one of the things that we are working on, like I said, is we're trying to do a survey that each participant will fill out. kind of on, how the call went, and, what would you rate it? The hope or the goal is for us to maintain kind of to have you or have an older adult paired up with a young adult for, I don't know, at least like 2 months or so. And then if, just to meet new people, we can switch you guys, or if you guys want to remain assigned, then we can obviously accommodate that as well. But yeah, especially during the beginning parts of the relationship, we will be periodically calling both the older adult and the young adult to see how the call is going. Either myself or I have a team of actually 5 or 6 other undergraduate students at Notre Dame. And so one of us will check in and give a call just to see how things are going.
I have a question.
Yes, Judy. Mm-hmm.
I wanted to know how you find the young adults who are part of your
question. Yeah.
Definitely. Great question. So kind of on, like I said, kind of on the security side of things, and if that's interesting to you guys, we do only recruit volunteers, or we only accept volunteers who are part of some other organization. So either a school or another nonprofit. That way we have some sort of security accountability to hold them to. But like I said, we do reach out to schools. We've reached out to the Jesuit High School over in Sacramento. We reached out to, oh, sorry about that. Yeah, that's perfect. So we've partnered up with the Jesuit High School, so we've gotten some volunteers from there. We were also featured on the Californians for All volunteer program, which is it was sponsored by the governor, by Gavin Newsom. It's just a program that I guess makes people aware of volunteer programs. So we were sponsored, or we were, I guess, featured on that website. So we got volunteers from that. We also are getting volunteers because we're reaching out to other colleges, other clubs and colleges who may have students who are interested. We have Notre Dame students as well. So for the most part, they're coming from high schools and colleges, institutions. No one really, I guess, like random, I guess you could say. We're making sure that we're keeping it safe like that.
And do you have a definite age range?
For our younger adults, well, we do have some. I think we do have some under 18, I guess from like 16 to 18. But we try to, for the most part, target 18 through 20, through like 25. I guess kind of, like I said, college students or people right out of college or graduate school, as well as high school students. Great. Well, thank you so much, everybody. If that's all the questions, or if there are any other questions, but if not, I really appreciate the time.
How many people do you have who are involved in the program, who've signed up for it?
Yeah. So we currently have so right now we have the capacity, we have about 30, 35, 40 volunteers already. We have some more as well who are signing up, but we currently have about, I would say 5, 6, 7, no, maybe about 8 to 10 older adults who are currently doing the calls. We've partnered up with about 3 or 4 senior homes already. And so they've given us a couple at each place. Some of it's obviously still in the works. We're still getting more older adults. But yeah, so we're starting small. We obviously need more older adults, and we have the capacity for them, which is why I would love for you guys to join our program. But yeah, we have the capacity, and we're ready for as many older adults as we can get.
Well, I want to thank you for coming and speaking with us. I really admire you and what you're doing, and we do need so many more geriatricians in this country to meet the needs of this growing aging population. And I love the reasons that you're doing what you're doing, and the story about your grandparents. It's very poignant, and I wish you the best. I know we all wish you the best in your studies and in your careers, and we hope you can come back to California and raise the numbers here of people who are treating us as we age. It's very important.
Definitely. Thank you so much, everyone, for the opportunity to speak with you all.
Thank you, Ethan, very much.
Thank you.
I enjoyed it.